One of my favourite games growing up was Super Smash Bros. Melee. Granted, I never played it at the ridiculous competitive level that a lot of gamers still do. I just liked having a game where all of my favourite Nintendo characters could come together and kick the ever-loving tar out of each other. Unlocking all the characters in Melee was quite time-consuming though, so when I encountered the mysterious swordsman, Marth, I was left quite disappointed, if not very confused. Like, who even was he? I'd never heard of him, not from any kind of media. Naturally, I decided to look up his in-game trophy description in order to gain more insight. The betrayed prince of the kingdom of Altea. The blood of the hero Anri flows in Marth's veins. He was forced into exile when the kingdom of Dolua invaded Altea. Then, wielding the divine sword Falchion, he led a revolt and defeated the dark dragon Medeus. Afterwards, Altea was annihilated by King Hardin of Acania. So that just left me even more baffled than before, with the key unanswered question being, what the heck is Fire Emblem? After a little research, the answer finally became clear. Developed by Intelligent Systems, Fire Emblem is a long-running Japanese series of turn-based strategy games with RPG elements. Much like Final Fantasy, a lot of the Fire Emblem games are standalone, telling self-contained stories with original characters. However, to keep a sense of general cohesion, some of the installments are far-off sequels, remakes, or spiritual successors to the others. And despite existing since the NES days, Fire Emblem wasn't shared with the West until after the Smash Bros. Debut, which is bizarre in retrospect, as the series is massively popular now. So my plan for this video was quite simple, to go back and enjoy the original Fire Emblem game, maybe see how it compares to more recent installments, but I ended up falling down a rabbit hole of sorts, which I'll be getting into shortly. So without further ado, let's take a look at the NES classic, Fire Emblem, Dark Dragon and Sword of Lights. Jeez, can I put a spoiler tag on the title of this game? That kind of gave it all away. Released in 1990, Dark Dragon tells the story of a dethroned, sword-wielding prince named Marth, who teams up with a small troop of loyal knights. Together, they rally an army and reclaim his kingdom. And, defeat a dark dragon with a sword of lights. The battles Marth encounters are often stacked against him in terms of sheer numbers, but this is where the strategy comes into play. You see, the Fire Emblem games play like a game of chess. The player and the computer take turns moving their units around a grid-like battlefield, engaging in automated battles upon contact with one another. Every named unit have their own class, and with it, their own strengths, weaknesses, and weapon proficiencies. And all of your units should be used in tandem to maintain the upper hand. If you allow one character to hog the kills, they'll essentially monopolise the experience points and often leave you stuck, with the tantalisingly strong paladin, Jagan, being the worst culprit of this. His abysmal stat growth keeps him permanently stunted, essentially making him a beginner's trap for anybody who considers using him. As well as keeping your team balanced, it's also worth taking note of the terrain. Certain types of terrain can only be accessed by certain classes, with Horse, Pegasus, or Dragon Riders having the greatest movement capability. With this knowledge in mind, you can take more liberties in how you approach and engage enemy units, which is especially useful when dealing with archers and mages, both of whom specialise in attacking from afar. Now, with all that in mind, Dark Dragon's most prominent gameplay feature, a series staple if you will, is the uncharacteristically dark permadeath mechanic. If Marth loses all of his HP at any point, it is game over and you have to replay the current battle. Standard stuff really. But this isn't the case for all of the other characters. If they die, it's actually possible to continue the game without them. And unless you feel like resetting after every death, this adds another layer of challenge. You can't get too far into the game if you suffer too many casualties. Ideally, you want to keep your units alive so you can reliably level them up, and whenever possible, promote them into stronger units. So, you'll often find yourself agonising over whether or not to cut your losses. It depends how much time you've sunk into your current chapter before somebody kicked the bucket. And speaking of series staples, there's something very satisfying about learning the origins of Fire Emblem's numerous character archetypes. You have the main protagonist, who is a young noble, their mentor, who seems strong at first but actually makes the game harder if you depend on them, a pair of loyal horse knights with an offensive red and defensive green motif, a mercenary leader who owns bones, a cleric who is rescued from the enemy, an edgelord swordsman who needs to be recruited from the enemy team. I mean, for as relatively simple a game as Dark Dragon is, it's amazing how well it laid the foundation for later series installments. And one such installment, Mystery of the Emblem, was actually an SNES remake and sequel to Dark Dragon.
Fire Emblem 楽しみだな。マルス、本当に会いたかったんだよ。みんな随分たくましくなったって。スーパーファミコンに新たなる伝説。
I don't even know what you'd call it. A mid-sequel? A pre-sequel? Maybe a requel? I think I just invented that word. Whatever you want to call it, Mystery of the Emblem, released in 1994, made a few tweaks to the original game. Aside from the obvious graphical improvements, several chapters and characters from the original were removed to maintain a better flow. On top of that, mounted units were now able to dismount at any time, and were required to do so when fighting indoors because, I don't know, good manners, I guess. But best of all, hunters and knights, classes who would previously cap their levels and become useless, could now promote into horsemen or generals. Taking these small improvements and extra content into consideration, I would highly suggest giving Mystery of the Emblem a try, except...
一本橋の攻防。守りの固い兵で敵を足止めし、後ろから間接攻撃。
In 2008, there was a DS remake of the original game, Shadow Dragon. This game introduced a ton of improvements, many of which were inspired by the GBA or GameCube or Wii games. First of all, you get the option to play through a number of prologue chapters, which offer a player tutorial and show Marth's escape from his home. There are also some extra chapters to help you build up experience points if you find a lot of your units are being wiped out. You also get a wide choice of difficulty levels to choose from, save points to make use of, the ability to change any of your character's classes at any time, a weapon triangle which gives swords an advantage over axes, over lances, over swords, new characters, new classes, easier promotion, easier leveling for healing units who would previously just serve as meat shields. God, there was just so much to this game. And despite all of this, it sold really poorly. Not many people actually bought this game, and critics still found it lacking compared to the other Fire Emblem games released around the time, which is a crying shame because it almost brought a permanent end to Fire Emblem's Western releases. And on top of that, it even prevented us from playing one of the most interesting games in the series.
Fire Emblem, 手ごわいしみれ.
Heroes of Light and Shadow was a DS remake of Mystery of the Emblem released in 2010, making it a remake? A remake of the requel? a requel, except it only covers the sequel story, so it's a Oh dear god, this is getting confusing. The main draw of this game was that it allowed the player to create a fully customizable character to serve as a secondary protagonist to Marth. You got to choose their name, with the default being Chris, their gender, their class, their appearance, their stat growths. It was a really cool idea, and it served as the inspiration for Robin and Corin, the hugely popular Avatar heroes of the 3DS games. From what I've played of it, this game is absolutely fantastic, offering you a whole new adventure from the perspective of a completely original character. I'd highly recommend playing it alongside Shadow Dragon. That is assuming you seek out the fan translation, or you're lucky enough to speak Japanese. So before I wrap up this little retrospective, there's one more little thing I would like to address. The Fire Emblem anime. The Fire Emblem OVA, which clocks in at just 2 episodes, covers the first few chapters of Dark Mystery Shadow Heroes and Sword of Lights, and I'd recommend watching them if you're a big fan of 90s fantasy anime. It's one of those adaptations that kind of leaves you wanting more, especially given how big Fire Emblem has become now. Hint hint, Nintendo. Full Fire Emblem anime series, please. Seriously, this is a series just begging for a fully animated adaptation. You guys are sitting on a gold mine. But with that, that is pretty much everything covered regarding Marth and his numerous adventures, so thank you very much for watching, my dudes. Oh, by the way, when I say dudes, I mean that in the gender-neutral sense, of course. I didn't mean to imply that this video is some kind of sausage fest. If you do like this video, please do leave a like and a comment. Thanks again, and ta-ta. Wait a second. Am I forgetting someone?